Hey everyone, I wish I could be with you tonight. I thought for my virtual presentation I would give you an example of what a day in discernment would look like for me. So I hope you enjoy the journey with me. If you get motion sick, you may want to turn your screen off. For me, discernment is the process of discovery where I explore a question or decision and determine a direction. How exactly that unfolds is unique for each decision. For me, discernment takes a systematic approach in terms of listening, gathering information, weighing the options, trying them on to see how they feel. And while strategies and systems are helpful, I also find that there are elements of discernment that don't make sense and can't be easily defined. This is why, for me, discernment is an art form. It isn't formulaic, but some structure can be helpful. Discernment, for me, is slowly, carefully, and oftentimes painfully finding your soul's way. My discernment process is I often start with trying to determine the underlying question. What is underneath what I'm trying to decide? What is the true question that I'm trying to answer? An example is in one of my last places of major discernment, a mentor brought up the question to me, when I'm at my best, towards what am I inclined? And prior to that question being discovered, I thought my discernment was really, well, am I going to take this job, or am I going to stay with the current job I have? And I think trying to see, where my true self is, where I find joy, where I see the divine throughout my daily life, is probably a much deeper and fulfilling question than just trying to check boxes on what should I do with this decision that is before me. A key piece for me in my discernment process is determining the space and time frame to set aside for this discernment question. How much time can I spend per week or even per day focusing specifically on this question? Going through my practices, spending time listening and focusing my attention on what there is to discover in this space. And then how long is reasonable for this discernment process to take? I was fortunate at one point to be given a period of 3 months for a discernment decision uh, in a vocational situation. And so with that information, I was able to strategize and form a plan for how I could spend the time that I had within that season to really fill um, my my discernment space with the opportunity to actually dive in um, and focus. And then by the time of that decision, I was ready. So I think that's a huge piece for me, is determining, how much time is reasonable, and having, soft walls around that, and then how much time am I going to be able to spend to focus on this while also attending to the other responsibilities that I have. In the time that I've carved out to focus my attention on discernment, I find myself with practices that are daily, like examine, where I can take a snapshot, a recording, maybe write it down, or just hold it in mindfulness and attentiveness, kind of how I felt today around certain elements of the decision, whether that be, you know, where my energy was, how I was feeling about the decision itself, where I found peace, etc. And then in more weekly rhythms or biweekly rhythms, depending on the time frame and the space available, I like to find time for focused meditation, listening. I really like writing. I find that it helps my process to get my words out on paper, and I find I can process well through that. Um, I like to gather all of the info and the facts, the data points that I possibly can to support the question. And I like to take space in discernment also to simply relax and to have fun and to play. Um, I find that holding that intention and allowing myself that space in what can be a stressful or anxiety ridden time, um, it really helps me get back to myself and focus specifically on the question at hand. And I feel like it really allows me to get my thoughts flowing when I'm relaxed and at peace. And some of the ways that I do this has looked like taking walks, hiking, running, skiing, and biking, but at a more leisurely pace than normal. Camping and taking dedicated discernment retreats to really get away and focus on engaging the divine, engaging myself, and really stepping into the decision. When I feel like I have spent a sufficient amount of time with the decision in the focus, when I'm coming up to the end of the amount of space I've allotted for my discernment, and when I've gathered what I feel like is enough data, it's simply time to listen and wait for a decision to come. This space can be particularly challenging for me, and I feel that it's been helpful for me to try on decisions and live through them in a way, kind of dream through them, and to really see how I feel. And as I try those on, I feel as though decisions start to solidify, come into mind, and I get a better understanding of just how I'll feel after committing to a direction through discernment. A decision may come, and if not, I continue to wait. It's hard to set a rule on time to take for a discernment decision, and as I mentioned before, I feel like soft boundaries are the best place to go to have an idea of time frame, to commit to that and to hold to it as best as possible, but knowing that there's space when things come up or deeper questions that need to be answered, and the process should be honored. But you don't want a discernment to take forever. You need to decide at some point, and it's up to you to determine that within your discernment of when the time for necessary decision comes. And for me, um, I know that when I feel it and when I can logically say that this is the decision I'm going to make and feel like I've turned over as many rocks as I can, and I move forward with confidence in that decision. I'm challenged in discernment in a few different ways. And I think the biggest one is that discernment for me can always sort of feel like a leap of faith, even with the peace coming from the process of discernment and spending many hours and focusing time and effort on this decision and engaging spiritually and kind of having that inner knowing, making that decision to step into a new or different space always feels like a leap of faith, and it always is a bit of a challenge, and I think can be daunting and anxiety ridden. But I feel like it is, one of the gifts of discernment as well, is that you get to have that unsure, not knowing, and live into it. It feels very human. Um, feels very connecting to other people um, in community, and I think through the process of discernment, there is assurance in that space. and peace that will comfort you even in those times of doubting and not knowing if you're making the right decision in the moment. I think the next challenge is I really feel is just waiting. I think in the fast-paced American culture that I come from, waiting feels like wasted time. It's inefficient. It isn't delivering success. Um, you're not driving growth by waiting. It feels like doing nothing. And I'm struck by the words of John O'Donohue um, in one of his poems that he says, "Time gathers its moments secretly. As we wait, we never know when we'll finally know, or when that peace or discernment will come to us." Along with the challenges I feel in discernment, I know there's so many gifts as well, far outweighing the challenges in many ways. I feel like one of the biggest pieces is wisdom, and spending that much time focused and attentive to what's going on in yourself, in your soul, in your surroundings, and engaging with the divine and with the community in this discernment process. There's a deep wisdom that comes in approaching a discernment season or decision in that way. Um, that is so beneficial moving forward. I think I've been able to really build off past discernment and grow into it in a way that feels more natural. It doesn't mean it's without its challenges, but it feels more like flowing in the current. And as I mentioned uh, before, there's so much peace that comes through discernment as well. Not wondering um, whether you made the decision without due diligence, holding into the peace that you've done the work, you've spent the time, you've focused the energy, and you've waited. I think that there's uh, just a lot of peace that comes from that even in the momentary changing of emotion or ups and downs, the ebb and flow of life, that's a bedrock to hold on to in discernment as you move forward. And I think there's an element of commitment that comes through a discerned decision as well, that it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to sit in the decision you've made for forever or a long time, but for the season allotted, it feels like a very strong commitment and a way to engage fully and to fully participate, to fully give yourself to what you've discerned, to be all in, to put skin in the game. I feel like that's one of the ways that we can really live fully and experience the fullness of life. And then I think the last gift is really just the journey with the divine and with the self that really makes discernment a worthwhile and worthy endeavor, a worthy challenge to take on. Thank you so much. Have a good night.